Hello everybody and welcome back to Throttle Grotto. This week it is freezing in the shop, but we are going to get this Datsun, we're going to get the starter changed, and we're going to turn this engine over and see if it'll fire. Stay tuned! Alright, so it is a little cold out here in the garage today. I've got a couple layers on, so that's why I'm not wearing the big orange jacket today. So I got a tip from a couple of you viewers. So I got a really cool tip from a couple of you viewers about taking the starter out of this car, and it was perfect timing because I do have to take the starter out of this car. The suggestion is to go in through the driver's side wheel well. That way you're coming right in on the side of it, and there's plenty of access to the bolts with a couple of extensions. Should come out real quick. So I'm going to do that first. Put the starter in. I know the starter that I'm putting in is good, so I'm not even going to bother to bench test it. And then we're going to prime the oil system, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to start, or at least try to start this car today. I can't promise that it's going to start and run, but I got my little heater going in the garage, so hopefully I won't be so hopefully the combination of that and working, I won't freeze to death in the shop today. So enough of me doing this. Let's get doing this. I don't even know what that is. Alright, so just looking at this, I can tell you that taking the starter out this way is going to be 100% easier than trying to get it from the top. I'll probably still come from the top to get one of the top starter bolt out, but the bottom starter bolt is right there. So super easy. You can bring that right out the side, and shouldn't be a big deal. 4 bolts will change this thing out, and move on to other things. So, aside from having to use a pry bar right at the end to get it past one of the lips here on the body that hangs down, it came out pretty easily. This one's got a little bit smaller body. I can't really see, the way I'm sitting, I can't really hold up 2 starters right now, but it's probably 2/3 the diameter of the stock one. So hopefully this will just slip right back in, and then I can put the bolts in it and move on to priming the oil pump and getting some oil moving through this motor before I start turning it over. I ran into a small issue where I had to extend the harness for the starter by about 4 inches or so. So I had to cut, solder, all that stuff, and so I'll plug this harness back in. It's just the eyelet and the little tab that goes on the starter solenoid, and then I'll move to the other side where we can prime this thing for oil, and then finally try to see if it'll start. Now the starter is installed, so the next step is to make sure that this engine at least has some oil in it, or correction. The next step is actually to make sure that the engine has oil all the way through it before I fire this thing off. So that is the next step. I'm going to pull the distributor out, and I'm going to see there should be a way to run the drive gear and use the drive gear on the bottom of the distributor to pump oil through the engine, which is very, very important if you're going to start a car that's been sitting for a long time, that gets oil through the bearings and through the top end and all that stuff. So that's next. Alright everybody, the oil pump has been primed. There should be oil up through the motor. Put everything back together. I'm going to hook up the battery and give it a test crank and see what happens. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. You know what's going to make this work a lot better? Gas. Got oil pressure. I've got oil pressure on the gauge. I've got fuel coming in through the carbs. I don't see anything too crazy other than that. Once I finally hooked up fuel, I might have a spark issue. I don't know. It's cold. I'm tired. I've had a long day, and I don't really feel like playing around with it anymore tonight. So I'm going to put the battery on the charger, unhook the fuel, and put stuff away. And I'll come back at it tomorrow and see if I can have some success with it. But the starter's working, and I'm getting fuel. The fuel pump's working, so the only thing left is spark. Alright everybody, welcome back. It is snowing outside and it's not much warmer here in the shop. So I'm only going to work for a little bit because I have to work again tonight. But it came out, I checked for power at the coil. I have power at the coil. I double checked the firing order because I wasn't 100% sure. And it looked like the firing order was off by 2 plugs. I still need to confirm that it's in the right spot. But I'm going to give it a quick crank and see if I get any fire. And we'll see what happens. Alright, still got no spark, it sounds like. So now I got to start checking the basic stuff. I'm going to do that and then I'll get back to you in a minute. Alright, so I'm almost out of battery on my camera because I forgot to charge it last night. But real quick, I forgot to turn the camera on to quick time when I was doing this stuff. But I set the crank pulley to top dead center. I pulled the cap off, replaced the points, regapped them, and put scrubbed up the contacts on the rotor. So hopefully I'm going to hook the battery up and this thing's going to at least give me some sort of sputter and indication of life. Otherwise I'm going to have to call it for today because I got to work tonight. So, I'm still not able to get it started. I'm going to have to do a little more homework. It might be the condenser. I feel like even if the distributor was 180 out, it would still at least pop and try to fight to give me something. So I've got some more work to do to figure out why this isn't going to run, but it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Hello everybody, welcome back. So this is day 3 of trying to get the Datsun running. Day 3 might be a little bit misleading, but let's say it's attempt 3. One of the things I found was, so this little guy right here, the distributor cap. I did a continuity test between the center terminal where the coil was, because I knew I had good spark from the coil, and the center pin, which the rotor contacts and spins around inside of here and sends spark out to the spark plugs. Well, between the two, there was no continuity. So that's probably a good reason why I wasn't getting any spark. So I got a new distributor cap and hooked everything back up, double checked my timing, my firing, or I should say my firing order, because I had the firing order backwards. On these cars, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of back of the engine to the front, which would make sense. But when I looked at it like a Volkswagen motor, and I'm like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not that way. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. So front of the car to the back. So just a little learning curve stuff. So I also double checked to make sure that my rotor was pointing at plug number 1 with the engine at TDC. I got gas. I'm going to hook the battery up and put my fuel line back in the gas tank here, and let's see if this thing will run. That would be awesome today. Okay, people. This car doesn't want to start, and I'd figured out why. The distributor, the drive gear that works the distributor, is buried down in the block, and it's a worm drive type thing. For whatever reason, I pulled it out the first time. I don't remember why I took it apart the first time, but I had to take it apart and pull that gear out. I didn't get it back in the right spot, so the distributor was a tooth off from lining up where it needed to be to give me the right adjustment in the distributor so that I could advance or retard the ignition timing. So 3 hours later, it's embarrassing that it took me 3 hours to get that gear lined up, but for whatever reason it just did not want to drop back in. There's a slot in the bottom, or in the top of the oil pump, and this gear has to drop in and twist into the slot and then drop all the way down to seat in. And I couldn't get it to do it to save my life. So I walked away from it, came back, had it back together in about 20 minutes. So now I'm going to try firing this thing up one more time, and hopefully this time I get some ignition. I think I've got the firing order right. I've got the distributor set right in the middle, so it's at 0. So I should be baselined to make this car run. I'll still have to do like setting the ignition. I'll still have to set the distributor timing. I'll still have to set the dwell on the points. All those things that I still need to figure out how to do, because I haven't worked on a carb car in forever. So hopefully this time it runs. The other way. Well, everybody, the Datsun still doesn't run, and that's after multiple hours of frustration of trying to get this thing started. I've got spark. I dumped a bunch of fuel in the float bowls and filled those up, so I feel like it's got fuel. So it's off to do some homework and figure out why this car doesn't run. I feel like I'm running out of time right now to play with this thing because I've got to get the rallycross car done before race season starts, and that is in less than a month now. So man, I'm under the gun right now to get the clutch done and the skid plate built and all that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I don't have good news on the Datsun yet, but hopefully we'll get there soon. So until next time, get out there and work on something.